Good evening and welcome. My name is Nick. I'm our Senior Recruitment Product Manager here at the Faculty of Science at UNSW Sydney, and it's my pleasure to welcome you here tonight to our UNSW Psychology online postgraduate degrees information evening. We've got a really jam-packed schedule that we're going to take you through, and really, I mean, it's a phenomenal opportunity to find out more about our two online postgraduate psychology programs, what they entail, the kinds of skills that you'll be able to develop, and the experiences you'll be able to have inside the classroom, and where that's going to be able to take you on the professional side and equally the personal side as you go through the program and graduate. As we begin though, I'd like to acknowledge the Bedegal people who are the traditional custodians of the land the UNSW Kensington campus stands on. I'd also like to acknowledge the Darawal people who are the traditional custodians of the land that I'm currently joining on as we join remotely tonight. And I'd like to pay my respects to the elders both past and present, and extend that respect to any other Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islanders who are present here today. So look, we're really fortunate tonight to be joined by two of our academic program directors. Firstly, Dr. Stephanie Rowley, who is a lecturer at UNSW Psychology and also the program director for the Graduate Certificate in Child Development Program. And also Dr. Kate Hutton-Bedbrook, who again is a lecturer at UNSW Psychology and also is the program director for the Graduate Diploma in Psychology. We're also going to be joined by two of our current students, Kayla and Nick, who are going to talk us through their experiences as current students within the program, why they considered doing these degrees, what they've got out of it so far, and equally where they expect it's going to take them when they graduate. Now, we will have a Q&A session at the end, and we'll make sure we leave ample time for as many questions as we can possibly get through. So make sure you're throwing your questions into the chat. There's the like function as well, where you can upvote those questions. My colleagues in the wings are going to be collating all of those questions and then feeding them through to our team at the end. And again, we'll make sure that we cover as many of them as we can so that we can give you the opportunity to find out hopefully a lot of unique insights about why you might consider these programs, but also make sure that you're walking away with all of your questions answered and a really strong understanding of hopefully the real benefits of these very unique programs, very flexible programs as well. So we will begin now with just a really short introduction to UNSW, and look, some of you may be alumni of UNSW, in which case brilliant, welcome. Others may be joining within Australia or more broadly, and you're equally welcome, and we'll give you a bit of a kind of context as to who UNSW is as an institution, where we've come from, and also where we're going, and why our psychology programs here are some of the absolute best in the world. So UNSW was founded back in 1949, and we were founded as a technical institute. So we were founded off the back of World War II. There was a shortage of engineers and scientists in New South Wales and Australia more broadly. And we were brought in as an institution to fill that gap. But since then, we've expanded. We've got 6 different faculties. We cover everything from law to music to medicine. We still excel really strongly in the sciences and in engineering. But really, I mean, there's lots of flexibility for students to study across faculties and to build some really unique skill sets through both our undergraduate and our postgraduate programs. Obviously, those joining us here tonight are interested more in those postgraduate programs. Some of them are very specialized, some of them are more generalized, so they can give you the flexibility to explore what it might be like changing a career and where that can take you. As a university, though, where we've got 60,000 students, we are phenomenally lucky to have an incredibly passionate community of students and educators and researchers who are looking to make a real impact upon the world. And so we see our graduates going off to take jobs at every level of government, to work in the public and the private and the not-for-profit sectors, and to work in Australia, but also globally as well. 300 plus degrees, there's lots of flexibility across all of those 6 faculties I was mentioning before. But behind all of this is our work integrated learning platform. And look, our work integrated learning platform is one of those university terms that may not mean too much now, but will actually mean a lot when you're a current student. And that's because the work integrated learning platform is designed, it's a team who sits centrally within the university, but they're designed to connect all of our faculties and all of our courses in with industry to make sure that there's really strong practical components, that you're applying your knowledge to real world scenarios, and building in a lot of those practical experiences and opportunities where possible across all of those degrees. So all of our degrees have a really strong industry focus. They're informed by industry. So when we build programs like the Graduate Certificate in Child Development and the Graduate Diploma in Psychology, we ensure that we go out and we consult with industry. We obviously consult with current students and prospective students as well, but we consult really heavily with industry to make sure that we're embedding all of the skills and experiences and knowledge that is going to ensure that our graduates are really at the forefront of those hiring lists, that they're prepared for those roles, but also that our programs are keeping in step. So we make sure that they're evolving as they need to. As a university, we're very fortunate to be in the top 50 in the world, and it really just means that you're going to be learning from some academics and researchers who are truly at the very fore of their particular field. Now they'll bring that content, those insights, their research, some of which is not even published yet, into the classroom and share that with you, so that you're equally exposed to that caliber of knowledge and really to understand where your particular fields, in this case psychology, where it's going, what some of those emerging and really important trends are. In terms of our postgraduate programs, though, they're very flexible. We'll talk more about the flexibility and the structure of that within the context of these two particular psychology programs shortly. Our graduates, as I mentioned, they go on to take roles across very diverse fields and very diverse environments. And it means that you're going to be building networks of colleagues and hopefully friends and peers that are going to be with you for that next phase of your career journey, and indeed, hopefully, longer down the track in life. So you're going to be building those networks in the virtual classroom, given these are fully online programs, but you're going to be building those networks as well, and they'll support you throughout the next stage of your journey. The other thing I love to talk about is the fact that we're the #1 in Australia in terms of us having Australian startup founders at the university. So it really is testament to the fact that there is a strong drive for innovation and development amongst the university as a whole, but particularly our student cohorts. And there's opportunities through organizations and affiliates and departments within the university, such as the Michael Crouch Innovation Center. And there are opportunities to pursue entrepreneurship opportunities, to be able to take an idea that you've got, run with it and see where it takes you, but also to just get involved for your own professional development. A lot of students, they don't want to go off and start a founder, but they want to get involved in pitching competitions. They want to get involved in building some of those skill sets because they're really pivotal to working in business, and they're going to help them accelerate their own careers as well. So that real mindset and ethos of entrepreneurship and innovation is something that drives our students, but also really drives our staff as well. Now, why might you consider UNSW Science? Well, I mentioned before that we've got really strong industry links, and look, we've got 400 organizations just within science that we engage with, and that's they're to clarify, they're partners that are both in the scientific industries and the non-scientific industries, but just within UNSW Science, we've got 400 partner organizations that we work with really regularly, and that's And it's bringing into the classroom a lot of the real world experiences and knowledge insights that they can provide. It can be guest lecturers, it can be working on case studies and assignments, for example, but it's also through other opportunities that students can apply for, such as doing internships. And we've got our careers and employability office, which are a really useful resource for those, particularly those who might be looking to change careers and may have taken time off as well and are looking to change careers and think about how they can build some of those experiences that will help them ease that transition. And there is a lot of support to really help you through that. We're also about driving innovation, and we're very fortunate to have 8 subjects ranked in the top 50 globally. And it means, as I said, you're going to be learning from some truly phenomenal academics and researchers who are going to be sharing their insights, but they're also going to be challenging you. They're going to push you, and it might feel a little bit confronting at first, but it's going to be incredibly rewarding for you because it means you'll hit the ground running in these programs and you'll get the most out of it. You'll find that it's a really supportive community, but a community where we challenge ourselves to better ourselves and to do more. And it means that you're going to really get the most out of the programs ultimately. And as I said, huge range of postgraduate programs that are ranging from everything from specialised coursework opportunities to those that embed research into them, as well as some, I guess, more flexible postgraduate studies that are designed for those who might be changing careers or who are thinking about building some additional skill sets that might supplement their particular field of study already. So without any further ado, I'm delighted to be able to introduce Dr. Stephanie Rowley to the virtual stage. And Steph is going to take us through a bit of a whirlwind tour of the Graduate Certificate in Child Development, why you might consider this program, how it's structured, again, what kinds of skills we're really fostering to help you get the most out of your engagement with your professional careers, your personal careers, and ultimately at the heart of it to ensure that the children that you work with are getting phenomenal engagements and are really, really well supported. So on that note, Steph, over to you.
Yeah, great to be at this event tonight, and I'm very happy to take you through some of the aspects of the Grad Cert in Child Development. So this is a unique offering in Australia. There's no other program like this in any other university. It's aimed at working professionals who work closely with children, but in a non-psychology background. So as I'm sure everyone can appreciate, psychology is in general is really widely applicable, and the skills that you can acquire through studying psychology can really help in whatever profession you have chosen. And that's particularly the case in working with children. So this program is really, it's intended to help you enhance your work with children. So not necessarily that you want to change career paths into psychology, you're happy within your career, or you want to take that in a slightly different direction and want some of the skills that and knowledge background that we can offer from psychology. So in the program, we'll cover content from several different fields of psychology, developmental psychology, obviously, so that's concerned with development from birth onwards, and then especially behavioural and cognitive psychology as well. So this program will equip you with the skills and background knowledge to apply an evidence-based approach to your work with children. So one of the advantages of this program is that it's entirely online, and so you can study wherever you are and whenever it suits you. So a lot of the content is really flexible. We have online lectures, online tutorials. The lectures are recorded, so you can access them whenever. Everything is fully online. We have textbook and reading materials that you can access from your home computers. It's 0.8 years in duration, so that is split up amongst 6 semester terms that stretch from sort of January to December. They're really 6 weeks in duration, so 6 weeks of content for each course, and then there's a 2-week break in between each of those 6-week blocks in which you may have an exam or an assignment, but otherwise that's a break in between the semesters. And we have 2 intakes at the moment. So one of those is coming up in HEC semester 2, which is in March, and the other in HEC semester 5, which is in August. So the things that you would learn in the graduate certificate are firstly the distinction between normal and abnormal child development. So we have courses aimed specifically at typical development from sort of prenatal to adolescent years. And then we also have a course dedicated to atypical development and some of the developmental psychopathologies that are common and that you might encounter in your work with children. So we will discuss from the perspective of sort of behavioural and cognitive psychology, the age-appropriate capabilities and performance expectations of children, which are applicable in settings like education and health, social work, and things like that. We will talk about the foundations and the neurobiology of learning and cognition, and specifically how these principles promote good behaviour and decision making, and how you can sort of tap into some knowledge about the way that we know children learn and make decisions to sort of capitalise on those processes to help children make those good decisions and engage in good behaviour. So we'll also look at factors that influence long-term memory consolidation and enhance attention. So again, these are things that are really applicable in fields like health, social work, juvenile justice, and education, obviously. We will look at the development, management and treatment of common childhood disorders. So again, like these are things that anybody working with children will come across time and time again, and it will really help to have that background in understanding where these issues can come from and how best they can be managed and treated. But not just limiting that to disorders of development, we also want to know in general how to promote well-being and resilience in our children so that they can grow up to be resilient and happy adults. So that is covered in our program as well. And just a bit more broadly, all of this will sort of be grounded within the scientific method and empirical investigation. So you'll also get an introduction to that methodology and a few skills in how to critically engage with scientific research, particularly that pertaining to child psychology. So our one-year program is broken up into 6 courses, so 2 each of sort of introductory, intermediate and advanced courses. So a student who enrolls in our program will need to do the introductory courses first, so in either order. And they are evaluating evidence, where we give you a sort of intro to research methodology and some very basic statistics, just so that if you come across empirical literature, you have a bit of a grounding in how to read and understand that research. And the second introductory course is a general introduction to psychology. So a bit of a taster of several different topics in psychology, like social psychology, developmental psych, animal learning, and things like that. Our 2 intermediate courses are child development, so that follows typical developmental processes that start from gestation, and all the way through adolescence. And the other one is learning and cognition. So you get a bit of a background in the processes that are involved in how we learn and make decisions and engage with our world. And then we have the 2 advanced courses. So these are developmental psychopathology. So this will take you through the common childhood disorders, such as ADHD, oppositional defiance disorder, eating disorders. We also will cover learning disabilities and autism, and it will also give you a bit of a background on how we determine what is and isn't a disorder. So to give you some skills to be able to recognise when something might be age-appropriate behaviour versus when something is likely to be a problem. And our final course in this advanced section is wellbeing and resilience. So again, having a look at the empirical research that we have that can inform us about what it is that can enhance wellbeing and resilience in childhood, to give children those coping mechanisms and skills to carry forward into their later life. So as I mentioned at the start, this program is really designed for anyone who's already working with children in their professions. So teachers, nurses, social workers, people working in juvenile justice and allied health professionals. So over the course of this program, what we will provide to you is some highly valued psychological skills that will complement and enhance your current expertise, which will allow you to leverage that skill set in order to improve outcomes for the children that you work with, especially those with diverse needs.
Thank you, Steph. Look, I'll jump back in there. I know there's some questions coming through as well already, which is great. So we'll answer those questions. There's a few for the child development program that I've just think of doing. So we'll hold those questions till the very end. But thank you, Steph, for running us through that. A really good overview of the program and what students can expect from it. And even just that dive at the very end there as well into some of the units of study that students can expect is interesting to see how that program develops really over the course of those 6 subjects. So now we're going to change track slightly and cover the Graduate Diploma in Psychology program. So it's my pleasure to introduce Dr. Kate Hutton-Bedbrook, who's going to do, again, a deep dive into this program. And again, I also know there's a few questions about this degree, which are already in the chat, so we'll make sure that we answer all of those at the end. So Kate, over to you.
Great, thanks Nick. Thanks for having me. I also am very happy to be here to talk to everyone tonight about the Graduate Diploma in Psychology. I would like to apologise just quickly in advance. I have a small child, so if you hear screaming, maybe I can actually use some of the child development program to manage that, but I apologise if she does start screaming. Okay, so I'm the program director for the Graduate Diploma in Psychology. And this was really designed as a way to provide students who already have a bachelor's degree, so obviously it's postgrad, with the opportunity to gain something that is APAC accredited, so the Australian Psychology Accreditation Council. And so what you're able to do with this is, if you did, for example, want to retrain, and I can go through some of the different opportunities both now and then in the Q&A, rather than having to do a full bachelor sequence and having to, which takes 3 years, you're able to get this fully accredited training in under 2 years. It's exactly the same in terms of equivalency to an undergraduate in psychology for accreditation purposes. So it's not necessarily referred to as a bachelor's, so it's a postgraduate bridging course actually, but it is the same and it gives you the same opportunities in terms of what you need to have achieved for accreditation in order to be able to go on for future studies if that's something that you're interested in. One of the main things that we cover in psychology, which I'm sure is covered in Steph's program as well, is trying to help students to develop a sense of critical thinking. Things like research skills, higher level analysis, they're all things that we integrate into all of the units of our program. So really, when you think about psychology, whether you're doing this as an upskill, you might just want to, develop some of these skills, or if you do want to have a career change, really the idea of the discipline and the way that we've focused on the grad dip is to help everybody understand this scientific method and this way of thinking that involves critical analysis and the use of research and evidence throughout all of our courses in the program. It's fully online. It's flexible, so there's going to be a little bit of overlap here with some of the things Steph's talked to you about. You can do this program full-time, part-time. I've known some students who have been very excited to get it done in the 1.7 years that it takes. Other students who are working full-time or might have family commitments, and so they like to do, not so many courses throughout the year. And there's absolutely no problem with doing it either way. So it's very, very flexible. And that's something that a lot of students have, mentioned that they really enjoy. At the end of completing the grad dip, you are eligible for entry to honours. So You are able to apply for an honours year at either UNSW or at another university. Obviously, the preference would be at UNSW Psychology, and you will have met the requirements for that. So there are a number of other things around that, which I'm sure will come up in the Q&A. But if you do want to go on and retrain, you will need to do that honours year as well after the grad dip. So it doesn't account for that. Cool. Okay, so this is really similar to Steph, but I'll kind of go through it again. Again, it's fully online. All of our lectures are online, the same as Steph's program. The tutes are online. We have the textbooks and the additional materials are all embedded into our learning management platform, Moodle. It takes 1.7 years, which is spread over 10 modules, which are 6 weeks each with 2 weeks in between. So very similar. So it's running on this hexamester calendar, but you'll have 6 weeks of contents, 2 weeks break, 6 weeks. And that runs from January to December, I think, around there. You can enter the grad dip at any point throughout the year. So we have annual intakes in all of the hexamesters from 1 to 6. There's no limitation about when you can join. That's okay. Okay, so what we cover in the grad dip is essentially a really comprehensive education in all of the main discipline areas of psychology. So it's really designed to be equivalent to the bachelor in that you learn from all of the different disciplines in psychology, and there are quite a few of them. So we will cover things like social psychology, cognitive, so things like learning and memory, physiological psychology. So we look at the neural mechanisms that underpin, for example, things like drug addiction, different types of learning and behaviour. We cover developmental psychology as well in one of the modules. And we have abnormal psychology, which is probably what most people would kind of think of as psychology. So sort of some clinical stuff, some of the things that lead to the development of mental health issues and the management and treatment of those. We also have 2 courses that focus on research methods, and this does include things like statistics, but it's all framed within how we can help people to develop the skills to be able to actually understand and evaluate evidence and use that as a framework in order to learn and understand the things that we cover in psychology. We look at theoretical and contemporary issues in psychology. So we do this by looking at the more broad theories of psychology, but it's applied to contemporary examples, and everything that we teach focuses on empirical research. So that we really have all of our lecturers are active academics, so you will have a strong evidence-based, basically, approach to the content that is delivered to you. We have an introduction to the use of psychophysical methods, the different approaches to the study of cognitive psychology, but also the way that we can apply the findings from psychology to different aspects in society. So if you think about something like social psychology, how can we use that information to actually affect change in society? And then, as I've said, we do really have this strong focus on the scientific method, which is really a way of thinking, how you can use data and appropriate data analysis to actually help you to engage with the research. So a large part of the skill and a lot of the assessments focus on this idea of being able to actually feel confident that you can use the evidence, critically evaluate it appropriately, and then, you know, go on and use that skill either in your current career, or if you would like to transition to psychology, that's a very important skill to have in our discipline. Okay, so what you'll actually study, we have 3 introductory courses and 1 course that is intermediary, but you have to complete within that sequence. So we have Introduction to Psychology courses. There are 2 of them. The first course focuses on things like social, developmental, cognitive learning, things like that. And then we have one that focuses sort of more on the behavioural stuff. So in that you might cover some animal learning content, some very basic neurobiology type of content, but things that sort of relates a little bit more to introductory physiological psychology things. You have to start with one of those two courses, but you can begin with either the first or the second course. It doesn't matter which order you start. We then have two introductory data analysis courses, which essentially are a research methods and statistics course in which you learn the basics of research methods in the first course. What are the terms that are talked about? What does a scientific method actually mean? How can we learn to develop this critical thinking framework? And then some very basic statistics that we use in the behavioural sciences. The second course is a more advanced statistics course, which focuses on specifically how we use those types of inferential statistics, which is something no one really needs to worry about right now, but things that are often used in psychology papers, and the way that you can learn to do those skills, but also develop the ability to be able to evaluate other papers by understanding that. We then have a series of advanced courses. So there are 10 courses overall. The remaining 6 courses cover things like behaviour and neuroscience, where you learn really all of the neural mechanisms that underpin a range of things about learning and behaviour, and with a focus on things like eating, disordered eating, things related to drug addiction, a range of things like that. But the purpose of that course is to really understand how we can marry, if you like, psychology and the behaviours that we see with the neural mechanisms that help to explain those. We cover developmental psychology in a 6-week course where we go over the basics of child development, focusing mostly on typical development with a little bit of atypical development. We also have courses that cover perception, how we perceive the world, things like vision, hearing, all of the basic kind of senses really get covered in that course. We have abnormal psychology, which again is the course that I think a lot of people are quite interested in. And this relates to really all of the different types of clinical disorders that you might come across, the way that we have to understand evidence-based diagnosis and treatment. And then we have a capstone course, which kind of helps you to develop overall skills that are part of this discipline. It sort of relates to a range of critical thinking and things of that nature. I believe that makes sense. So in terms of what you can get from this, really, you're able to apply what you learn in this type of field to much, much more than just mental health space. You can use this obviously in your relationships, you can use this in your day-to-day life, but this is also a very, like psychology in general is a very useful skill for workplace, things like HR, being able to manage a range of things. And that's partly, as Steph touched on, this idea that we're really delving into how people learn and how we make decisions. And so it can be really broadly applied. In psychology, if you do choose to go and have a change in career and you do honours and then you're interested in masters, it's not necessarily just the case that if you complete masters that you would then just be clinical psych where you're just looking at mental health issues. You can use your skills from this in many different things. So psychology really is what we call a hub discipline, and it is applied to a very diverse environment. And this can be things like health psychology, which people might have heard a lot about, mindset and things like that recently in the media with Ash Barty. It relates to things like that. Obviously business, sports, things like marketing. Psychology is really important in all of those areas, human resources and education. Really learning psychology, I mean, for me, I think that you learn a lot of skills and you can develop insights both into your own behaviour, but also things that can really help you understand your own current work. It can help you to make a difference in terms of differentiating yourself within your current job. But it really does give you a background in a range of skills that are very, very useful in a number of settings. So, it's not me.
Well, good. Thank you very much for that, Kate. It's a very comprehensive dive into the Grad Psych, and particularly the fact that it is very much the case that there's so many different pathways that kind of program opens up. If you're looking to change careers, but also, again, if you're looking to enhance your career and really see where that can take you, depending on what your particular profession is. I've now got the probably least fun job out of all the presenters this evening to take you through the nitty-gritty of how to apply. I'll keep it short and sharp, but as we've touched on, both of these programs run to the hexamester calendar, and in terms of the entry requirements, the minimum for both these programs is really just holding an undergraduate bachelor's degree. It can be in any discipline, or a higher university qualification, of course, is equally acceptable. And then you also have to make sure you're meeting the minimum entrance requirements for admission to UNSW. So that includes, in particular, satisfying our English language requirements. And more information on those English language requirements is available on the website, so you can find out more there. And you can also jump onto the degree finder to find out more about both these programs. I might ask my colleagues working in the wings to drop the links to both the child development and the Grad Psych programs into the conversation, into the chat, so that you can jump onto the website there and have a look for more information. And it does dive a little bit deeper into some of these admissions aspects as well. In terms of applying, you're applying through our Apply Online, so it's a direct application to the university. For those who are thinking about starting in Hexamester 2, both programs obviously open in Hexamester 2. The Child Development Program, as we mentioned, initially only runs to the Hex 2 and Hex 5 calendar at this point. So there's 2 intakes per year, but then there's 6 intakes throughout the year for the Grad Psychology. So those applying for Hexamester 2, applications close in just under 2 weeks' time, so the 27th of February, and then classes begin shortly thereafter on the 7th of March. For those who are looking to apply for the Graduate Diploma in Psych, but might have done similar psychology units in previous studies, it's also possible for you to apply for recognition of prior learning as well. And so you'd be doing that at the point of applying to the university. I'm very happy to take more questions on the admissions side of things. Again, appreciate it's probably the least fun part of tonight's proceedings, but yeah, happy to really dive into some of those questions that you might have. So throw them into the chat, and we'll get to them very, very shortly. And on that note, we're now going to dive into the Q&A component of this evening. So I'm going to invite all of our presenters back up to the virtual stage. So again, Dr. Steph Rowley, Dr. Kate Hutton-Bedbrook, but I'm also going to take this chance to introduce 2 of our current students. So delighted tonight to have both Kayla Woods, who's a current student in our Graduate Certificate in Child Development program, joining us, and also Nick Jones, who has firstly a great name, and secondly, is a current student in the Graduate Diploma in Psychology program. So look, we might begin the Q&A component, and the great thing is we've got plenty of time for, we've got just under kind of 20 minutes for the Q&A, so we can really dive deep into the learning experience and some of the career outcomes, the skills, any other questions that you've got. But as we kick it off, I might throw over to Kayla, first of all, to just do a little bit of a brief introduction to yourself, why you chose the Graduate Certificate in Child Development, and also how you're enjoying the program so far.
Yeah, hi. So I'm a primary school teacher, and I have been for about 5 years. And I had a son not long ago who is now 18 months old. And since he was born, I've just become so intrigued in how he does things and why he does things. And I kind of, I follow Instagram accounts and things like that, and I kind of decided that I would rather pursue, go through the science education of it all. And I found the graduate certificate to be so beneficial in my parenting life. And I guess a positive side note is it's applicable to my career as a teacher as well. And so, yeah, I've really enjoyed it. I'm about halfway through. Being a full-time working mum, I've found the workload to be predictable and manageable. It helps that I'm really interested in the topic, so I tend to, listen to the lectures and just soak it all in because it's just so applicable to my life. So I've really enjoyed it so far.
Very glad to hear it, and you know, interesting, I guess, rationale for choosing the degree. It sounds like you've got both the personal and the professional kind of balance there in terms of the rationale. So I'm sure we'll get to talk more about that shortly. Nick, I might throw over to you. Do you want to give us again a bit of a brief introduction to yourself, why you chose the graduate diploma in psych, and again how you're enjoying the program so far?
Sure, thanks, Nick. Yeah, great name. Yeah, so I started the program in June, a couple of years ago, so I'm actually almost finished. This is my last course. My background before starting the program is in political science, and I was working as like a government contractor, and I found myself getting more exposure to like data and things like that, and learning more about like why people make decisions. And I found myself interested in psych, but not sure where to start. Came across the grad diploma program, and I just want to echo some thoughts from Kayla, where it's been really predictable with like my work to keep it going. So I just went by in a flash, really. Well, I can't believe this is my last subject. It's actually my last week now. But yeah, it's been really, really enjoyable. And I've really just enjoyed soaking up all the content, and definitely think it's a really good program to get started in if you want to learn about psych. And I didn't know what I wanted to do at the start, but now I'm pretty sure I'm interested in clinical psychology.
Brilliant. And did I catch you correctly? Did you say this is your last week in the program?
That's right. Yeah. So I finished in HEC semester 1 this year. So I've just got this last week of content, and then I'm done.
Brilliant. Well, look, I'm glad we caught you now, where you can still tout the kind of current student banner, because it sounds like you're about to graduate. So look, good luck, I guess, with the final exams. Look, we might dive into one of the questions that came on very early on, and Kate, I might throw this one to you. It's about the honours pathway, I guess, from the graduate diploma program. And so it's an attendee who said that they've heard that students who are applying for honours at UNSW Sydney in the psych program, but who have done the graduate diploma, have a less likelihood of getting into honours compared to students who have done an equivalent bachelor's. What's your view on that? Obviously, you engage with a ton of students who are looking to go into the honours program. How competitive is it to get into the program, and how do we treat students coming from the grad dip versus, say, a bachelor's program?
So it is a very competitive program. There are limited spaces. It is not accurate that there is a preference for Bachelor of Psychology students into the honours program. It's essentially, basically, you have to have a minimum requirement of a minimum mark of 75 in order to be eligible to apply. Really, beyond that, depending on the cohort size and things of that nature, which are not something that I could predict right at this moment in time, they are the things that would, I suppose, make a difference as to whether you were accepted or not. It has nothing to do with whether you received that 75 minimum through the grad dip or whether you did that through the Bachelor of Psychology. It is, I suppose, a lot of the continued study in honours is competitive. It would be, it just wouldn't be true to say that it's not. But you have all of the same skills, and if you're able to meet those minimum requirements and the other conditions that may be necessary for that intake, you are absolutely on equal playing field with the Bachelor of Psychology undergrad students.
Very good to hear. And look, Kate, I might stay with you for another question, actually. And that is that in terms of the grad dip psych, is it possible to do more than one subject per HEC semester? So I guess accelerate the course. What's your view on that?
It's not. So the reason that it's not possible is that, as you've heard from the two current students, really the courses are quite intensive. So there is a lot of content and assessments, but we want it to be able to, for people to be able to work at the same time. And essentially, if it was to be something where you kind of locked on all the courses together, it really would become not a manageable program. It's not designed for that, the way that the content is delivered and the assessments are designed. And so at this time, you can't do more than one subject at a time. hopefully that's
fair enough. And I think it's definitely the case that we want to ensure all students are succeeding and performing well. And so it's, as much as some students might believe they can kind of push through that, there's definitely kind of a good rationale for curbing it. Look, I might throw now to Kayla, and then I'm going to throw the same question to you, Nick, and that is, you kind of alluded, I guess, to this, but what does an average workload look like during one of those semester weeks? And then equally, what does it look like during assessment periods? And so, Kayla, I'll start with you.
Yes, so the workload typically is 2 hours of lectures to watch, a 2-hour tutorial with your lecturer, and then any supplementary work that you need to do. So there's quizzes and assignments that you also need to work on every couple of weeks as well.
And Nick, is that kind of similar for you, or have you found it? Obviously, you're kind of right at the end of your degree. What's the kind of the balance?
Yeah, so that's definitely same for the GDP, where the quizzes are definitely something you'll become very familiar with. It's in all of the courses, and yeah, you usually have 2 or 3 other assessments to do throughout the program. It does sort of depend on the subject, but that general pattern does stick. So it's just about managing that time, making sure you've got enough time during the week to get it all done.
Fair enough. And then, Steph, I might throw to you another question here, which is really around that student experience and how we structure the program. And that is, how collaborative is the child development program? Is there a lot of one-to-one interactions that students get? And how does that kind of tutorial setting structured?
Do you mean like one-to-one with the instructor, or is that what you mean?
Well, look, I actually didn't write the question. It was fed in from the attendee, but I'm channeling the attendee, and I'm gonna assume that they're wondering, is there one-to-one interaction, and also what does the tutorial kind of scenario look like?
Yep, sure. So the lectures for each of the courses are pre-recorded, so there isn't direct interaction with the people who are delivering the lectures, though all of them have said that they are open to being contacted. So if you had specific questions that you wanted to get in touch with the lecturer directly, they're all happy to do that. But otherwise, your main point of contact is the coordinator for your course, and they will be the one who deliver the tutorial. So the tutorial is a 2-hour live session. So we really strongly encourage students to come to the live session. It's held online, just in a forum like this. But that's where you get that one-to-one interaction, and it really does work that way. So they're small classes, and you really get that opportunity to connect with the coordinator. They can answer any of the questions that you had about the lectures, and then we have really in-depth discussion as well about the topics that are covered in that week's lectures. Can I also just jump in on the previous question about the workload?
Of course.
One point of distinction between the graduate certificate and the graduate diploma is that there is slightly less of an expectation that you engage with those supplementary materials. So that is quite important in the graduate diploma, because it's an accredited program and you're going on to get that accreditation in psychology. Whereas we appreciate in the graduate certificate that people are generally working within their careers. They want to keep those professions, and they're trying to fit this study amongst their already full-time workload, and they are parents as well. So there is a bit more flexibility in how much you engage with the content. So there is that 2 hours of lectures that are really required, and 2 hours of tutorials, a weekly quiz, and 2 written assignments. But then on top of that, we have additional readings, textbook material, practice quizzes, and online activities, but all of those are optional. So you really do have that flexibility to take as much or as little as you want from the program.
And Steph, keeping with that flexibility theme, we've got a question here which is not necessarily going to be applicable to the programs. We can kind of tease it out, but the question is it easy to switch from full-time to part-time? I mean, I think we've discussed that it's designed to be a very flexible program. And maybe, I guess, to expand upon the question is it possible to, I guess, stop the program if you wanted to for a semester or so and then resume it later on if you're balancing, say, work commitments?
Yeah, definitely. So the only limitation at the moment will be the graduate certificate. Because we only have those intakes twice a year, the order in which the courses are delivered are pretty set. So if you do take a break, you'll just have to wait until the next time that, you know, the course that you're up to in that progression is offered. So there might be a bit of a wait before you can rejoin, but absolutely we support part-time or deferring the program when life gets busy. And I'm sure Kate can speak more to that, but because they have intakes every semester, there's not that limitation on having to wait until your next course is offered.
Yeah, and so I guess it's good to know there is that flexibility to go from that full-time to part-time, you know, as you need. Kate, is it the same for the GD Psych in terms of just the volume of offerings that are there is maybe a little bit more flexible for students?
Yeah, so essentially it's a similar approach. If you need to defer, obviously that's completely fine. If you wanted to drop down, we've had many students do that. And obviously really the main impact is it may take you slightly longer to hit your graduation point, mostly just because you've taken the time off. In the GD Psych as well, once you've done the introductory courses, you can do the remaining courses in whichever order you like. And so while we have multiple intakes, we also have there's also that additional flexibility. I suppose we don't, as long as you've done the initial courses, you can do the other courses in an order that might suit your schedule, so that having to wait to come back in is not, is not as much of a problem for the GDP since we've got those extra intakes. Yeah.
Good to hear. And I think I may have heard your child in the background there. I apologize as well on my end. I've got two small dogs who have begun howling and clawing in the room next to me. So hopefully you can't hear that. The joys of obviously us all presenting from home. Kate, I might stick with you for a bit of a rapid fire session now because we've got quite a few GD Psych questions that have come through. Firstly, is there a minimum average GPA required to apply for the honours program? I know we can direct students to the honours information on the website, so I might get one of my colleagues in the wings to drop that information in, but is there a minimum or an average GPA?
You have to have a minimum of 75.
Excellent. And staying on the rapid fire train here, in terms of if you say you work in marketing but are looking to move into health, is the grad dip going to be enough to make a potential move, or would you suggest another program? I mean, I love that we're getting into kind of almost like the life advice and philosophical advice section of this session. I mean, I would say to the person who's put that in as well, it does depend on the area that you're looking to move into health. But I guess broadly, Kate, I mean, do you see students doing the GD Psych going into work in health?
Yeah, look, I mean, I think there is a huge caveat that it depends what type of health you're talking about. Yes, so we've had students coming from all different backgrounds. There's one student I know that's currently training to do clinical psychology. There are some that have applied it to a range of fields. So it's really, it would relate to what type of health you wanted to do, but it certainly is possible as a pathway to move into that type of career. Yeah.
And look, something that we maybe haven't fully fleshed out yet that might be good to quickly cover, Kate, as well, is just for those who are thinking about going down the accreditation pathway, what is the process? We've kind of touched on that you'll do, either a bachelor's or a grad dip psych, and then you do the honours year. What follows after that?
Yeah, so once you do the honours year, then if you want to do clinical psychology, you have to go on to do a master's in clinical psychology, which is a 2-year program if you want to be a registered clinical psychologist. I do know that some students have been able to do a supervision pathway to do clinical psychology, which is essentially where an external supervisor takes you on, you sort of basically train. I would be wary of that, because for a number of years now there's been talk that that pathway will be removed. So I wouldn't sort of, you know, make that my ultimate plan without kind of further investigating that through APAC. You can also do things like masters in organizational psychology, masters in forensic psychology. So if you were interested in psychology but not necessarily the kind of typical clinical psychology, there are other master's programs that you can do, but it would require that extra 2 years study after you complete your honours year.
Brilliant. Look, Kate, I'll give you a short breather. We will come back though. I've got a few more questions for you, but we'll give you a short breather. And look, for everyone who's still with us, I can see we've still got questions coming through, which is brilliant. We'll hang around for, you know, another 5 or 10 minutes, and then we'll kind of wrap up. So if you do want to hang around and we'll work through those questions, by all means. For those who have other places to be, I know it's 7 o'clock on a Tuesday. I don't know where you might be at 7 o'clock on a Tuesday, but if you've got places to be, by all means, thanks for joining us, and hopefully we'll see you at UNSW soon. But in terms of some additional questions here, I might throw first to you, Nick, and then I'm going to throw another question at you, Kayla. This is a question from Zoe, Nick, and the question is, are the tutes held after work hours? And also, what does, I guess, an exam look like for you, given that you're doing this program remotely?
Yeah, so the tute's being held after work hours. So there isn't a fixed tute time. It depends on the tutor and the specific class. So usually, like right before the hexamester starts, there'll be like a poll, and that group of students will pick between a few different time slots. So I've had ones which are during the day, but I'd say it's probably most commonly somewhere between like 4:30 and 5:30 starting time, at least in my experience. I'm not sure if that's the common experience, but I think just maybe my group that went through, because I did go through in order, just because I preferred to. Quite a few of us all went through together, so I think we kind of just like majority rules made the tutes the same each time. But yeah, and towards the question on examination, so there isn't like a long form examination in the program. There's the quizzes, which you have to do each week, and they are closed book. But other than that, generally more like written assignments, and there are a few like oral presentations in my experience. Yeah, I'm not sure if anything's changed, but yeah.
Obviously, Kate, do jump in if anything changes. But look, I might throw the next question over to you, Kayla. And look, I'm going to be a bit cheeky with the way I phrase this question. So the question is really around, I guess, you know, the question is from Katie and says, you know, can you get the grades to get into, say, honours if you're working full time? So I guess it's more a grad diploma psych question, but I want to throw it to you because I want to get a feeling for the fact that, you know, you're a teacher, you're obviously, you know, a new mother. In terms of balancing, I guess, your academic performance with everything else that's going on in life, is it possible to do, and do you recommend it?
Recommend the course or honours?
No. Sorry, not recommending honours, although obviously we do recommend honours. No, just recommend, I guess, balancing, you know, doing studies and everything else that's going on in life, having a full-time job and you know, I guess the personal side of things as well. Is it possible to maintain your grades effectively while balancing everything else that's going on?
Yes, I think so. I'm doing quite well in the course so far, and I work full-time as a teacher and a mum and a wife. So, and I go to the gym and I do grocery shopping, and I also am doing really well on this course. So definitely possible. Perfect.
Look, that made me feel really bad about the fact that I probably should be going to the gym more regularly. But yeah, look, I think it's good to hear that it is possible, and I think it's also probably, and it's getting more into the life advice side of things, but it is really about, I think, probably being kind to yourself when you start a program like this, because you're going into postgraduate study. There's different expectations around what that means, what the expectation is for you, and the commitment. But it is about being kind to yourself to know that it's going to take a little bit of time to adjust and to really get used to that transition. But once you get into it, you know, I mean, from Kayla's experience, for example, it sounds like you really can make the most of it, and you just kind of, you find what that balance is for you. In the interest of time, I'm going to throw a few final questions your way, Kate, because I know we've got a few more eager students who are interested in the graduate diploma in psychology. In terms of doing the grad diploma in psych as a way of potentially going into further, I guess, research or pursuing a PhD ultimately, is this a useful pathway, or are there alternatives students might consider if they're looking to go into, I guess it sounds like the students considering psychology research or a psychology PhD?
I would definitely say this is a useful pathway, not a youthful pathway, sorry. Yes, so once you do honours, essentially by the time you complete honours, it would be the same as having done a Bachelor of Psychology. You've got the same experience, and at the end of honours, you can then either do research, or you could choose to do clinical, or you could choose to do an applied type of thing where you use the skills. It's definitely a very useful way to get research skills and to get into honours to then go on and do further study.
I do apologise. I lost you momentarily on the screen there, but I definitely appreciated the answer. Staying with you, Kate, for another quick question on the grad diploma in psych. And that is, if students are doing this because they want to get into the honours year, but are unsuccessful in getting into the honours year, again, we did mention that it is very competitive, and it's obviously important to note that. It is important to note that many universities do offer the honours program as well. So it's, you know, it's only one avenue, obviously, doing it through UNSW. But what are the other alternatives, I guess, if they don't get into that honours year straight away, but they still do want to pursue registration?
I'm not 100% sure. It may be possible that you can look at APAC. I would suggest going to the APAC website and checking whether there are still pathways for supervision that potentially don't require honours. There are honours bridging programs that you can do at other universities, not offered at UNSW. If you want to go on to do registered clinical psychology, you will have to either have done honours or an honours equivalent, which again would be offered somewhere else, in order to feed into one of those pathways. You could, I suppose, do things like counselling and stuff like that, but that's not really, I wouldn't want to give anyone advice about that because that's not really my background. I don't have that much information.
Yeah, and look, I think it's good advice that this is really only one perspective that we're able to provide here, but because it is externally accredited and managed, it is obviously worthwhile, you know, have the conversation with us and have the conversation with UNSW, but equally have that conversation with APAC. And you know, I think the other element of it is, you know, you need to obviously make your own decision and be really cognizant of the fact that it is a competitive program, but equally be optimistic and you know, if you're undertaking a program like this, it's postgraduate study. It's going to open many different doors in general, but also, you know, it's going to be intrinsically rewarding in terms of a lot of the skills that you're going to get out of it, and the fact that you're going to push yourself to, I guess, that next level on the educational side of things. So it is worthwhile keeping in mind that there are those broader outcomes you're going to get out of it, and you'll be optimistic that you're going to love the program, and therefore you're going to put the hours in to really get the most out of it. Now, we are running frantically out of time, but I never really listen to deadlines or timelines. So we've still got quite a few people who are joining us still. So we'll wrap up on a final question or two now. And I'm going to throw this question to Steph. And this question is from Chris. I'm not sure which program Chris is enrolled in, but Chris is enrolled in his courses and classes, paid course fees for the first course, and they just want to know what happens next. So Steph, for students who are enrolled and are kind of ready to kick things off, I assume they're ready to kick things off for HEC semester 2. Is there anything they could be doing now to prepare? And then what can they expect to hear from us next?
So once you're enrolled and everything's all done on that side of things, then you just need to wait until your Moodle page gets activated. So once all of the enrollments have been finalized, then that's when you'll get put into your Moodle class, and you'll be able to access that course through the Moodle platform. Before the session begins, and I think it's the same for the grad dip, we'll put up like the course outline, the program outline, contact details for your course coordinator. Sometimes the first week of lectures will be available, like right from the word go, but that, I think that depends on the coordinator and how organized they are. But if everything's, you've got your confirmation of enrollment and all of that, then all you need to do is wait until you get the Moodle page activated, and then you can start chatting to your coordinator and meeting your other peers in the class. Yeah. So everything will be delivered through that Moodle platform, and it's the same for the Grad Dip.
Yep. Okay, perfect. Look, I mean, it sounds like exciting times. It's actually just a bit of a waiting game for that student. But yeah, I mean, obviously we're only a few short weeks away from HEC semester 2 kicking off. So we are pretty much out of time. So I'm going to wrap up with a final question for all of our panelists. I'm going to be really kind to the current students who have joined us by throwing first to them, because this question gets harder depending on where you are in the order here. So the question really is, what advice would you give to someone who's considering the program? And Nick, I might start with you and then throw to Kayla afterwards.
Because it's an online program, I definitely recommend just proactivity. So like, always get to know your tutor, even if you're not able to like attend the live sessions. Make sure to make contact. And if you've got curiosity about honours and masters, try and find someone who is a clinical psychologist and ask about their experience, because that helped me a lot. So that would be my advice if you're just starting out.
I think it's really good advice. Yeah, that proactivity and just being ready to kind of dive in. And yeah, I think we heard it earlier as well. Being able to approach your lecturers and tutors, the academic staff are phenomenally friendly and always happy to help. So it is as simple as sometimes just shooting them an email if you're worried about something or if you need to get extra advice. And they're always more than happy to do so. They might schedule a Teams call if that's going to be easier. There's always a kind of a way to communicate and chat with them. Kayla, over to you. What advice would you give to someone considering one of these programs?
I definitely recommend doing it. My advice would be to manage your time really well, to book in those 2-hour slots to be able to cover all the material. And it's really handy to have watched all the lectures before you meet with your lecturer, the tutorial, because then you're able to have that to and fro conversation and really consolidate your learning.
Look, I think a lot of students in their undergraduate degree don't necessarily do the readings and the preparation before rocking up to their tutorials. So I think good advice that it's postgraduate level study. There's a different expectation there, but there is also, I think, as you said, the fact that you're going to get out of it really what you put into it, and that's a really important aspect of it. So thank you for the advice, Kayla. I'm going to throw over to Kate now. Kate, what's your words of wisdom?
I would agree with all of those comments. I'd also say in something like the GDP, so often people enter just dead set that clin psych is what they want to do, and I've seen many students go through all of the different disciplines and come out with a different opinion on the other end, or even as Nick said, he wasn't sure when he started and now he's really sure that he wants to do clinical. So I think just really taking all of the content in and being open about where this pathway might take you.
Excellent. And look, last but certainly not least, Steph, over to you for your piece of advice.
Yeah, I would really just follow on from what Kate was saying. Like, the beauty of both the Grad Dip and the graduate certificate is the structure of these online programs mean that it's a really personalized experience. You have a small group of people, you really get to know the coordinator through the tutorials. And it's a really great opportunity to pursue your passion. So you have that sort of one-to-one connection with the person who's teaching you, and it just gives you a lot of opportunity to ask questions and really engage. And we know that, like, from experience in teaching, that you're going to get the most out of it if you're engaged. And this is both of these programs are really good, really well set up in order to do that. So you're going to get out of it what you put in, and this is like the perfect format to be able to really pursue what it is that you're interested in. And yeah, as Kate was saying, just be open-minded about what you want to get from it, and see where it takes you.
Brilliant. So that's a really nice note to end on, I think. And it's true. I think there's so many opportunities that these programs can provide that it really is about diving into it, being proactive, and applying yourself, because they're going to really transform your life on very much a personal level and a professional level, as we've heard from people like Kayla and Nick. So on that note, we're going to wrap up there. Lots is always happening at UNSW. There's always talks going on. There's always events. If you want to stay in the loop with some of our events, information evenings, things like our open and info days, and obviously those critical application closing dates and that, feel free to connect with us. We'd love to stay in touch. We'd love to see you at some of the other events down the track. And you can also always reach out to our Future Students office whenever you need. So the team are really there to answer any inquiries that you might have. It can be, I guess it's probably less on the life advice side, although, if you get through to me, we might get a bit philosophical with where your program can take you. But they're definitely there to cover off the career side of things. Some of the skills dive deep into the nitty-gritty questions like, if I'm studying full time, can I do all these classes in the evening? They're always happy to be there and support you through that. So reach out to our team, our future student advisors, and look, thanks to everyone who's joined us. So Steph, Kate, Nick and Kayla, it's been a pleasure having you all here today. Hopefully the students who have been, the prospective students who have been joining us, and actually currently enrolled students, as we found out from Chris, hopefully all those who joined us today have had a very enlightening experience. I think we've covered a lot of ground across these programs, and why you might consider taking them, and why you'll hopefully find them really, really rewarding. So thanks again for joining us. Thanks to our audience for joining us. And look, on behalf of UNSW and the team here, we wish you all the best for your studies and your future career. We look forward to really seeing where it takes you, and hopefully seeing some of you at UNSW very soon. Cheers.
You're the person the world needs. Life is changing, and the future is uncertain. You may not know how or why yet, but you know you're here to make a difference. You're not waiting for the universe to give you the answers. You're finding them for yourself. Challenging echoes with evidence. Few people have great ideas. Even fewer make them happen. It takes a dreamer, an explorer, a researcher, a leader, a thinker. It takes someone like you.